She sat in the back of a ballroom filled with 350 people, and not one of them knew her name. She wore a $7 to $9 dress from a discount rack. Her heels were scuffed. Her seat was tucked behind a pillar, near the service entrance, where the noise of clinking plates drowned out the applause she was never meant to hear. Her family was on stage, shining, celebrated, adored, and she was invisible. But somewhere across that gilded room, a silver-haired stranger was walking toward her with an envelope. And inside that envelope was 20 years of justice. Before this story truly begins, take just 1 second to subscribe and hit the bell. Because the woman you're about to meet spent her entire life being told she wasn't enough. And what happened next? Nobody saw it coming. Not even her. Her name was Dulce. And this is her story. The Witfords were the kind of family whose names appeared on the sides of hospital buildings. Old money. Manhattan money. The kind of wealth that doesn't need to announce itself because it's already woven into the city's architecture. The family patriarch, Gerald Witford, ran a commercial real estate empire worth $92 million, a company his own mother had built from nothing, from a single rented office in Brooklyn, back in 1965, with little more than a vision and an iron will. Gerald had 2 daughters, Miranda and Dulce. Miranda was everything the Witford name demanded. Flawless grades, prestigious schools, the kind of daughter you frame and hang on the wall. By 27, she was on her way to becoming a Harvard-trained attorney, groomed from birth to carry the family legacy into the future. And Dulce? Dulce was the quiet one, the one they called slow. She was 7 years old when the doctors confirmed what she'd already suspected. The letters on the page didn't stay still for her. They swam and shifted and rearranged themselves into puzzles nobody else seemed to see. Dyslexia. A learning difference. Something that, in a loving household, would have been met with patience and support. But the Witford household wasn't loving. Not for her. When Miranda needed help, tutors appeared. French lessons. SAT coaches charging $400 an hour. Violin lessons at Juilliard. No expense was too great for the daughter who shone. When 12-year-old Dulce asked her mother for help with reading, her mother sighed. Dulce, Priscilla said, barely looking up, we've already spent so much on specialists. At some point, we have to accept that some children just aren't academic. 12 years old. And she believed her. So Dulce learned to survive on her own. Audiobooks became her lifeline. She built a system of visual diagrams and flowcharts that helped her understand what printed words couldn't easily give her. And every Sunday afternoon, she took the train to her grandmother Eleanor's apartment on the Upper West Side, where an old woman with paper-thin hands and fire-bright eyes sat with her for hours. You read slower than most, Eleanor told her once, squeezing her hand. But you see things others miss. That's not a disability, sweetheart. That's a different kind of vision. Dulce didn't fully understand what her grandmother meant. Not yet. Christmas, 2018. 20 relatives. A mahogany table. Crystal chandeliers and catered food and the annual performance of Witford family perfection. Gerald stood at the head of the table, wine glass raised, voice filled with the kind of authority men like him wear like cologne. I'd like to make an announcement, he said. Miranda has been accepted to Harvard Law School. Full scholarship. The room erupted. Applause. Cheers. Aunt Catherine pressed a napkin to her eyes. Uncle Richard clapped Miranda on the shoulder like she'd just won the Super Bowl. My eldest daughter, Gerald continued, beaming, will be the first Witford to attend Harvard in 3 generations. More applause. More celebration. And then, Gerald's eyes drifted down the table. To the quiet end. To the daughter sitting with her hands folded, waiting. And Dulce. He paused. The warmth in his voice evaporated like morning frost. Well, Dulce is also here. Soft laughter rippled through the room. Uncomfortable. Cowardly. The kind of laughter people offer when they don't know what else to do. Miranda laughed with them. Dulce stared at her plate. The roasted lamb blurred behind tears she refused to let fall. And then, a hand found hers under the table. Thin fingers. Papery skin. Warm with something fierce. Grandma Eleanor. Seated beside her. squeezing gently without a word. When Dulce looked up, her grandmother's eyes weren't soft. They were furious. A silent, burning fury aimed directly at her own son. Eleanor said nothing that night. But 3 months later, she called Dulce to her apartment and pressed a small mahogany box with brass hinges into her hands. "Keep this safe," she whispered. "Don't open it yet. When you need it, you'll know." Dulce took the box home, tucked it in her closet, and tried to forget the strange, heavy weight of those words. 18 months after that, Eleanor was gone. Pancreatic cancer. Swift and merciless. Dulce held her grandmother's hand in the hospice. She was the only family member there at the end. The box stayed unopened. In 2022, Dulce graduated from a state university, not an Ivy, never an Ivy, and applied for a job at Whitford Properties. She wanted to prove she belonged, that the family business could be her path too. Her father agreed to hire her as an administrative assistant. $42,000 a year. That same month, Miranda joined as chief legal counsel. $280,000, plus bonuses. Dulce's job consisted of photocopying documents, booking conference rooms, and fetching coffee for executives who never bothered to learn her name. She wasn't invited to a single meeting, never shown a single contract. But she watched. And she listened. And in those long, quiet hours in the copy room, she discovered something about herself that her father had never taken the time to find. She could see patterns others missed. When executives talked deals in the hallways, she sketched diagrams in the margins of her notepad. The flow of money, the relationships between parties, the places where conflict might be hiding. The skill she'd built to survive her dyslexia had become something else entirely. Something powerful. Eleanor had taught her this. During those Sunday afternoon sessions in her apartment, spreading old contracts across the coffee table and teaching Dulce to read them not word by word, but as systems, as structures. "Your father reads contracts like a lawyer," Eleanor had told her. "He looks for what he can exploit. You read them like an architect. You see how all the pieces connect." Then, one April afternoon in 2024, an email arrived. Subject line: Position restructuring, confidential. They were letting her go. Effective July 1st, generous severance. HR would be in touch. That evening, Dulce stayed late organizing files no one would ever need. Through the thin office wall, she heard her parents' voices. "We can't have her here when Miranda takes over," her father was saying. "It looks bad." The CEO's sister working as a secretary. Her mother's voice came softer. "We've done everything we could for her, Gerald. Some children just don't have what it takes." "Exactly. So she needs to go." Dulce pressed her palm flat against the wall. $42,000 a year. A studio apartment in Queens, shared with 2 roommates. No savings. No safety net. Losing this job meant losing everything. But the money wasn't what made her chest go tight. It was something deeper. Colder. The realization settling into her bones like winter. If she let them do this, she would spend the rest of her life being exactly what they'd always said she was. Not because she'd failed, but because she'd never truly been allowed to try. Miranda's graduation party was tomorrow. She wondered what other announcements her father had planned. May 15, 2024. The Plaza Hotel. Grand ballroom. 350 guests. Crystal chandeliers and silk tablecloths and a 12-piece orchestra playing Gershwin in the corner. Business partners. Investors. White shoe lawyers. Extended family in designer gowns and tailored tuxedos. And Dulce, in a $7 to $9 black dress from Zara. Drugstore makeup. Scuffed heels. Her mother intercepted her at the entrance. "You couldn't find anything nicer." Priscilla's gaze swept over her like a cold draft. "You'll be at table 27. Near the service entrance. Try not to draw attention to yourself." She leaned in close, Chanel perfume overwhelming. "Tonight is Miranda's night. Whatever resentment you think you're entitled to, keep it to yourself." Table 27 was hidden behind a pillar. Her seatmates were distant cousins she'd met twice at funerals. But across the ballroom, near the entrance, she noticed a silver-haired man in a gray suit. He wasn't eating. He wasn't mingling. He was simply watching the room. And when his eyes found hers, something cold and quiet moved down her spine. At 8:30, the orchestra stopped. Gerald took the stage. He praised Miranda's Harvard ranking, her clerkship, her accelerated partnership track. His voice swelled with pride and performance. And then he said something that silenced the room. But tonight, I'm not just celebrating her achievements. I'm announcing her future. Miranda joined him on stage in an emerald Valentino gown. Effective immediately, Miranda Whitford will inherit my entire estate. Our Park Avenue residence, valued at $13 million. And most importantly, a dramatic pause for the room. The position of CEO of Whitford Properties when I retire. The ballroom erupted. Standing ovation. Cameras flashing. 350 people celebrating. Not one glance at table 27. The cousin beside Dulce leaned over. So, what does that mean for you? Before she could answer, she felt movement. The silver-haired man was walking through the crowd toward her. Slowly, deliberately, like he'd been waiting for this exact moment. He stopped at her table. Miss Whitford. That's me. He pulled a business card from his breast pocket. Cream-colored. Embossed. Morrison and Blake, attorneys at law. My name is Jonathan Ellis. I was your grandmother's lawyer. The words hit her like cold water. She left something for you, he said quietly, with very specific instructions about when to deliver it. From inside his jacket, he produced a cream envelope. Heavy stock. Sealed with red wax bearing a notary stamp. What is this? She whispered. Her will. His voice dropped further. The real one. The one your father doesn't know exists. She stared at the envelope. The notary seal read Morrison and Blake. September 12, 2019. 5 months after Eleanor had pressed that mahogany box into her hands. Your grandmother gave me explicit instructions, Ellis continued. I was to deliver this document on the day your father publicly disinherited you. He glanced toward the stage, where Gerald and Miranda were still basking in applause. I believe that just occurred. Dulce's hands trembled as she took the envelope. What's in here? For the first time, something almost like warmth crossed his face. Mrs. Eleanor asked me to tell you. Give this to Dulce on the day Gerald shows her exactly who he is. By then, she'll be ready. He straightened his tie. I'll be available when you have questions. And then he was gone. Dulce pushed through the service doors into an empty corridor near the kitchen. Fluorescent lights. The muffled sound of applause behind heavy walls. She broke the wax seal. 3 pages of dense legal text. A notarized signature. That date again, September 12, 2019. She read slowly, carefully, forced every swimming letter into focus. I, Eleanor Margaret Whitford, being of sound mind and body, do hereby revoke all previous testamentary documents and declare this to be my last will and testament. And then, midway down the second page, her eyes found a paragraph that stopped the world. To my granddaughter, Dulce Ann Whitford, I bequeath 51% of my shares in Whitford Properties LLC, currently valued at approximately $4 to $7 million, along with all voting rights associated therewith. She read it again. And again. 51%. Controlling interest. The will continued. This bequest is made with full knowledge of my son Gerald's treatment of Dulce. She has been excluded, diminished, and denied opportunity, not due to lack of ability, but due to lack of support. Dulce is not slow. Dulce was abandoned. And I will not allow her father's prejudice to continue after my death. A sob caught in her throat. Grandma had seen. She'd seen everything. The will included a condition. To activate the bequest, Dulce had to formally request an emergency board meeting within 72 hours of receiving the document. 72 hours. The deadline would fall at 8:30 in the evening on May 18th. She leaned against the cold corridor wall, the document clutched to her chest. Her grandmother had given her a weapon. The question was whether she was brave enough to use it. That night, in her Queens apartment, she finally opened the wooden box. Inside, A handwritten letter on Eleanor's personal stationery, a faded document stamped 1965, and a USB drive, sleek and modern, clearly added years later. Eleanor's letter explained everything. The 1965 document was the original partnership agreement, the founding charter of Witford Properties. It established that the founders' shares carried permanent voting rights that could not be diluted without full board approval. Rights Gerald had never known existed. The USB contained something else. Board meeting minutes from March 2018, when Gerald had proposed reducing his own mother's voting rights from 51% to 10%. His stated reason: she was too old to understand modern business. He had tried to take everything from his own mother, and Eleanor had documented every second of it. The next morning, Dulce made one phone call. Margaret Coleman answered on the second ring. Margaret was 72 years old. Silver-haired. Sharp as a scalpel. She had built half of Brooklyn with Eleanor in the 70s, and she had been waiting, patiently, for this exact call. "I need 3 board members to sign the petition for an emergency meeting," Dulce said. "I'm one. You'll need 2 more." "I can do better than that," Margaret said. "Gerald Witford isn't as popular as he thinks. I'll make some calls." By that evening, the petition was filed. Board meeting. May 18, 10 a.m. Witford Tower. 4 to 2nd floor. Gerald found out at 4 p.m. Miranda called 4 to 5 minutes later, voice tight with controlled fury. "What did you do?" "I don't know what you're talking about." "Margaret Coleman hasn't requested anything in 15 years, Dulce." "What did you do?" "Maybe she has concerns about company management." Miranda hung up without another word. Through the office wall, Dulce heard her father on the phone. "Dulce? My God, Miranda, she can barely read a spreadsheet. She's not a threat to anyone." Dulce smiled at her keyboard. For the first time in 28 years, being underestimated felt exactly like an advantage. May 18th. She stepped off the elevator onto the 42nd floor in a borrowed blazer 2 sizes too big and a leather portfolio she'd bought at Goodwill for $12. The security guard tried to stop her. Miranda appeared and tried to humiliate her. Gerald arrived flanked by senior executives and told her to go back to her desk. And then Margaret Coleman stepped through the boardroom doors. "I invited her," Margaret said simply. "She has standing to address the board." Gerald's jaw tightened. "Fine. Let her speak. We'll see how long it takes before she embarrasses herself." Dulce entered the boardroom. 12 board members. A polished walnut table. Portraits of past executives on the walls. And above the fireplace, a portrait of Eleanor. Her grandmother's painted eyes watching from above, still sharp, still knowing. When it was her turn to speak, Dulce rose from her chair. Her hands were steadier than she expected. "What I'm about to present may come as a surprise to some of you," she said. "I ask only that you listen to the evidence before reaching any conclusions." Gerald sighed audibly. Miranda offered a smirk. Then Dulce placed Eleanor's will on the table. "This is the last will and testament of Eleanor Margaret Witford, founder of this company. Notarized September 12, 2019. It supersedes all previous documents under New York state law." The room went silent. "That's impossible," Gerald said. His voice had lost its authority. "My mother's will was executed in 2015. "You have a copy of her previous will," Dulce replied, her voice level. "This is the one she wrote after that." Jonathan Ellis stepped forward and confirmed every detail. Every signature. Every notary stamp. The document held in escrow at Chase Private Client. Bulletproof. Unbreakable. Gerald tried to fight. Miranda tried to dismiss. Then Dulce pressed play on the 2018 board meeting audio. Her father's voice filled the room. "Eleanor is 81 years old. She doesn't understand modern business. I moved to reduce her voting rights to 10%. The silence that followed was absolute. The board read the will. Their legal counsel spent 4 to 5 minutes on the phone with Morrison and Blake, with Chase, with the New York State courts. When Robert Hartley, the board chairman, removed his reading glasses and addressed the room, his voice carried the weight of inevitability. "Our legal counsel has confirmed The will presented by Miss Whitford is valid under New York state law. It supersedes all previous documents. Effective immediately. Dulce and Whitford holds 51% of Whitford Properties shares. The room exhaled. As majority shareholder, Hartley continued, Miss Whitford has the right to propose motions to the board, including matters pertaining to executive leadership. He looked directly at her. Miss Whitford, do you have any motions you wish to bring forward? Dulce stood and surprised everyone in the room, including herself. I'm not proposing to remove Gerald Whitford as CEO. Miranda's head snapped up. Margaret raised an eyebrow. What I am proposing is a vote of confidence. The board will decide whether Gerald Whitford retains their trust. If the majority votes no confidence, he resigns. If they vote confidence, I will not interfere with operational leadership. This is a revenge fantasy, Miranda snapped. This, Dulce said calmly, is corporate governance. The same process our grandmother established in these bylaws 40 years ago. If Dad has the board's confidence, he has nothing to worry about. Robert Hartley called the vote. All those expressing confidence in Gerald Whitford as CEO, 4 hands. All those expressing no confidence, 7. 1 abstention. The motion carried. Gerald sat frozen, staring at his mother's portrait on the wall. And then, for the first time in Dulce's 28 years of life, her father looked at her. Really looked. Not with dismissal. Not with contempt. With something she had never once seen aimed in her direction. Fear. He walked out of the boardroom without a word. The corridor outside was empty when Gerald caught up to her. Priscilla was with him. Mascara streaking down her cheeks. You ungrateful, scheming. Gerald. Priscilla grabbed his arm. Not here. She just destroyed our family in front of 12 people. Dulce stood her ground. I didn't destroy anything. I told the truth. Your grandmother was manipulated. That lawyer, Ellis, he must have. Grandma Eleanor wrote that will 5 months after you tried to strip her of power, Dulce said, her voice steady as stone. You didn't lose because I betrayed you. You lost because you betrayed her. Her mother stepped forward, eyes swimming. Dulce, sweetheart, we were trying to protect you. You've always struggled, and we didn't want to. You didn't protect me. You erased me. The words came out quiet. Not in anger. In truth. 28 years of Christmas dinners where I didn't exist. Family meetings I wasn't invited to. A salary that was a fraction of my sister's. That wasn't protection, Mom. That was abandonment. And I spent my whole life trying to earn the right to belong in my own family. She looked between them both. I'm done earning that. The elevator doors closed on their faces. She leaned against the brushed steel wall. Breathed. The adrenaline was ebbing. And what replaced it wasn't what she expected. Not triumph. Not satisfaction. Grief. Because the hope she'd carried for 28 years, the quiet, unkillable hope that someday her parents would see her, love her the way they loved Miranda, that hope was gone now. She'd let it go herself. And somehow, that was both the saddest and the most peaceful thing she'd ever done. Gerald Whitford signed his resignation letter on May 19th, at 4 in the afternoon. Dulce learned about it through an email from the board chairman. She read it 3 times. Then forwarded it to Ellis for review. His response arrived within the hour. Fair offer. No hidden strings. Congratulations, Dulce. Over the months that followed, something unexpected began to happen. Her mother called. Asked to meet. Just the 2 of them. They sat at a coffee shop in Midtown, neutral territory, and Priscilla wrapped her hands around a cup she couldn't bring herself to drink. I'm ashamed to say this, she admitted, but I'm apologizing for both reasons. Because I'm genuinely sorry, and because everything has changed. At least that's honest, Dulce said. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a start. And Miranda. They met on a bench near Bethesda Fountain in August, the heat pressing down like a held breath. Miranda looked different. The perfect armor had cracked. Dark circles. Hair pulled back. The golden child, finally human. Being the favorite, she said softly, isn't a gift. It's a different kind of cage. Dad expected perfection as a baseline. And when you pushed back, I told myself I was protecting you by staying quiet. But I was protecting myself. Because if I defended you, I became a target too. She finally looked at Dulce. I see you now. I'm sorry I didn't look sooner. They sat in silence. Two sisters. Same house. Strangers until now. I can't go back to what we were, Dulce said eventually. But I'm not interested in staying enemies either. Miranda's eyes filled with tears. Maybe we start from scratch. Maybe we do. By November, Dulce had moved into her own apartment in Brooklyn Heights. 1 bedroom. Pre-war building. A view of the bridge her grandmother had once crossed on her way to that first office in 1965. Her new title at Witford Properties, Director of Sustainable Development. A division she'd created herself, focused on green building practices, environmental impact, the kind of forward-thinking innovation Eleanor would have championed if she'd lived to see it. Salary, $185,000 a year. Plus dividends. On her wall, she hung Eleanor's portrait. The same one that had watched over the boardroom for 40 years. Sometimes, when the evening light caught it just right, she could almost see her grandmother smiling. You did it, Grandma. You gave me the tools. I just had to be brave enough to use them. Looking back now, Dulce understood something she couldn't have known at 27. Eleanor hadn't left her 51% of the company because she was better than Miranda. She'd left it because she trusted Dulce not to become what power had made Gerald. Dyslexia was never her flaw. It was the thing that taught her patience, observation, the ability to see the whole picture when everyone else was reading one line at a time. The things that made her slow in her parents' eyes were the same things that let her see the truth when everyone else looked away. And now, finally, Dulce Witford got to decide her own worth. Not by what her father said. Not by what her sister achieved. Not by what anyone else believed. By her own standard. Her own measure. Her own truth. That was the real inheritance Eleanor left her. And nobody, not ever, could take that away. If you've ever been the overlooked one, the dismissed one, the one they said would never amount to anything, you don't need a secret inheritance to prove your value. You just need to stop waiting for the people who can't see you to finally look. Because the right people, they were never the ones who needed convincing. By the way, where are you watching this story from today? Drop your city or country in the comments. Because it truly is extraordinary how far these stories travel around the world.